friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time, and I'm here today to talk a little bit about how to get started in buying in bulk. This is a topic I haven't really thought about approaching in this way before until I had someone that came in and recently made a comment about specifically talking about buying herbs or spices, such as this 8-ounce bag of nutmeg I have right here, or the way I typically buy my herbs and spices, like this 1-pound bag of organic Ceylon cinnamon. Now, the only reason I bought this one in 8 ounces is because they didn't have a 1-pound bag, or I would have, but instead I bought 2 8-ounce bags. Why? Because it was a really great deal, and nutmeg is one of my favorite spices. So let's talk about how you do that. So the comment that came in was in reference to it's a lot easier for them to buy a little 1/2-ounce container of an herb for $3 to $4 than to spend $30 on a whole 1-pound bag. Now, as far as I remember, it was about 25 years ago when I first started buying things in bulk. Until that time, I was buying my herbs and spices in those little tiny containers that are about a 1/2 ounce. I think there might be some that could be as much as an ounce, and back then, 25 years ago, they were $3 to $5 for one. I have no idea what they cost now because I haven't bought them since then. And so, but let's work off the basis that it is about $3 for a 1/2 ounce. So let's do a little bit of math here first. I'm hoping that doing this math with you will help you maybe encourage people to reconsider buying in bulk, and then we'll talk about how you can go about that on limited funds. So let's just say you've got an herb that is actually $3 for a 1/2 ounce in one little container. Or you can buy a whole pound of it in a Mylar bag like I typically do for around $30. Now, usually these herbs, when I buy them in a 1 pound, they range in price from $15 to $30. That really depends on the herb. So let's look at it this way. We know that there's 16 ounces in a pound. So a 1/2 ounce at $3 would mean that a full ounce, so if you were to get 2 1/2-ounce containers, that's going to cost you $6 for 1 full ounce of whatever that herb or spice is. Now, let's look at a 1-pound bag. 1-pound bag has 16 ounces. So if we take that 16 and multiply it by $6 per ounce, what we end up spending on 1 pound of that same spice or herb, if we're buying it in the little 1/2-ounce containers at $3 a piece, is $96 for that, for the same amount that I have in this bag right here, which might have cost me $30. So just with that alone, I have saved myself $66 by buying it in a 1-pound bag. Now that's just one example, and that's just picking the numbers that I was given, you know, $3 comparison to $30. So to me, I'm looking at $66 is a significant savings, especially if it's an herb or a spice that you're using a lot and if money is tight. Now, obviously, you may not want to buy in bulk for something that you rarely use. So it might be more cost effective to get that 1/2 ounce or even that full ounce for $3 to $6 if it's something that you rarely use. So what got me started in buying in bulk, anything in bulk really, was that first trip I ever made with a friend to Costco. And until that point, I might have been in a Costco once or twice, but by this point I had had 2 kids and was more into looking into saving money, especially when it came to food. And so one of the things when I went in there to buy, because we go through a lot of black pepper, because Patrick, he loves black pepper. And when I went in there and I found that I could buy, I don't know if these are still 1 pound. No, they're not 1 pound anymore. They're 12.7 ounces and they're more expensive than they used to be. But that was 25 years or so ago. But I found that I could buy a whole pound of coarse ground black pepper. Once I did all the math, I was saving myself about $50 just on the one thing. And I don't remember if it was the black pepper or the baking powder or whatever, but when I did the math, I was grabbing stuff right and left that I used on a regular basis. Baking powder, black pepper, I can't remember some other spices. I think some granulated garlic, because we go through a lot. Because I was just blown over by what I could save by buying by the pound. And I didn't have a Costco membership at that time, but after that, I got a Costco membership because doing the math on that alone, I realized I could save enough in one trip to Costco to pay for my membership for the whole year and then some. That's where I first started stocking up. So I still get my black pepper there because we really like their coarse ground black pepper that they carry. I've tried buying organic through various sources and it became harder and harder to get. But I also bought, at one point, they had this available on Costco online, but I haven't seen it since. I don't remember what I paid for this, but it was an even better deal than what I can get this for now. So how on earth, if money is really tight, how on earth does someone get to where they can buy at least one of their favorite herbs, spices, or even if it's flour or anything else that you want to buy in bulk, such as I brought out this bag of walnuts right here. And nuts, that's another thing. If you can buy them in bulk, you can save so much more money than you can in your local grocery store in just a little bag. And so I buy the nuts in bulk. I vacuum seal them into jars, and in this case, since it's not a canning jar, so so a food saver top wouldn't fit on that, I use the vacuum chamber to seal them up in jars for long term and get them out of the plastic bags. Even though they will actually last just fine in the plastic bags, I do like to, when I'm able, put them into jars and then vacuum seal them, and then I have in smaller amounts that are easier to work through at a time. So coming back to how do you do this, because it's going to cost you a lot more as far as paying out at one time for a 3-pound bag of walnuts than a 6-ounce bag of walnuts at the local store. But if you do your math and you figure out your overall savings, just like with the $30 bag of herbs or the 96 for 16 ounces in small little containers, well, obviously I'm saving enough money by buying it like this that I could buy 3 bags like this. I could buy 3 pounds for what it would cost me and still have money left over to keep buying them little tiny little containers. So how do we do this? How do we make it work to get started? Because when I first started buying foods in bulk, we did not have a ton of money coming in. Patrick had a decent job and I was still teaching dance, but you know, we had 2 kids and a hospital bill I was trying to pay off because we didn't have health insurance. And back then I wasn't doing even though we were using wood heat, and I started hanging the clothes to dry year round, and that was saving me at least $50 a month. There are still a lot of ways I needed to learn about how to save money. So what it really comes down to, and I can only make assumptions, so please bear with me and be patient with me as I talk about this, because I have no idea of all the many different people that watch our videos what each person's spending habits are. We're all going to have our different spending habits. We're all going to have our different things that are important to us. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to when we made the decision to pay off the house quite a number of years ago. And we took 2 years of that time to really crack down, and we actually did get the house paid off within the 2 years. In fact, 6 months earlier than what our actual date was. Now, we have a whole video just on how we did it that I'll link to down below, but it really falls into that same manner of thinking. So if your budget is already really tight and you can't, maybe you're paying for all your regular things that you normally do and everything's perfectly balanced, you don't have that extra $27 to spend on a whole pound of a spice or an herb, but you have $3 to spend on a ½ ounce. Well, what you have to do is you have to really examine week by week, maybe even day by day, what can I live without, even if it's for a short period of time. So some people are in a habit, and again, please know, I'm not assuming this is any one person or even the lady that made the comment about the herbs. I'm assuming that she practices pretty frugal habits to begin with. But Sometimes we can have habits that we forget about, we don't think about, habits that we could actually live without. So I see a lot of people, we just saw it the other day going through town, huge line in front of the mocha stand. And sometimes it still blows me away. Now I can see a mocha now and then from a mocha stand as a special treat, but some people will hit the mocha stand every single day. Well, how much does it cost these days for a mocha? I mean, I don't know because I don't buy them. I know years ago it was $5, and last I looked, there were somewhere around, of course it's going to depend on what kind you get, $7 a pop. And some people will do that 2 to 3 times a day. You know, to me, even once a day is just mind-boggling, because let's even just say it's as little as $5 a day. Well, $5 a day in a week, that's $35. That's more than enough right there to buy a 30-pound bag of herbs or spices. That's definitely more than enough to buy a 25-pound bag of rice or flour. So by trying to really analyze what it is you have. I mean, it doesn't mean you have to cut out everything you enjoy forever. Just like us, for that 2-year span of time, we didn't go anywhere. We didn't make our usual trip down to Oregon for the family camp out that we loved going to. That was one of the things we had to not do for a couple years, because even though we had our own camp trailer and we didn't have to pay for lodging, it still was a lot of money driving down there and pulling the trailer. And then if we still had to rent the campsite, then that's that much more money. And so we had to just stop all that stuff for a couple years. And it didn't mean it was forever. It just meant it was for a period of time. And as we've mentioned in other things, sometimes you can also find that once you go without something for a little while, you can find out that maybe it's actually not even that important in the first place. So that could happen, but again, it might even be just cutting one thing for a week. So if you're into a daily mocha, but I'm just using that as an example. Maybe it's renting a movie once a week or every day. Or maybe it's even a monthly subscription to something like Netflix or Amazon Prime. If it's something like that, is it possible you can cut that out for a period of time, take that money, and then put it towards buying something in bulk? Because once you get yourself to the point that you can, now I've got this 1-pound bag of cinnamon, this is going to last me a long time, which by the way, I have several pounds of cinnamon because I stock up on stuff like this, maybe even once a month for a while until I have a certain amount. But once you have this, now what you've done is you've just freed up that $3 per container that you would have been spending, and you can start setting that money aside to put it towards buying maybe a bag of walnuts next time, or a container of pepper, or a bag of wheat grains or beans in bulk form. It's just taking one thing at a time. I think too often people will come into videos like mine and other people out there that have been doing this kind of stuff for about 20, 25 years or 50 years for some. And it can be hard to grasp, how do you do this when you first start getting into it? How does somebody just go out and buy bulk food? Which is why I brought out some freeze-dried stuff. Because freeze-dried things like this was one of the very last things. We didn't get into buying any kind of freeze-dried foods like this until after we had already got ourselves to a point to where we were out of debt and already had a pretty good food storage. So the freeze-dried foods were only to add to what we already had. And things like this in number 10 cans and Mylar bags have a much longer shelf life. So those were things that came later, after we already had ourselves established and got out of debt, because buying freeze-dried foods or buying a freeze dryer can be very, very expensive to do, especially if you're living from paycheck to paycheck and your paycheck is filled up with all of these other bills. I understand that. So you have to start somewhere, and the misconception that a lot of people have is that somebody decided to get into prepping and they just took several $1,000s and bought 1, 2, 3 years worth of food in bulk and put it up. Now, some people can do that. Some people have enough funds on hand that once they make that decision, they can do that. But that's not most people. Most people that get into doing what we do here started small, and we started with maybe 1 or 2 things, and then from there we built and expanded and added on. I'm always adding new things to my food storage. I still have my basics. I have my grains and my flours and my herbs and my spices and the sugar and the salt, and I've expanded on there. You know, I've always adding to new types of herbs and spices, whether it be in the form of buying them like this. Eventually, a little at a time, started growing my own herbs. That's going to be the best way to save money. So once I got to a point where I was growing enough oregano that I could save up enough in a single year's harvest to last me for a few years, well, that definitely freed up a lot of money where I could buy even more bulk foods. So just in the oregano alone, and the sage and the thyme and the rosemary, these are all things I'm now at a point where I don't have to buy those herbs in bulk. Same thing goes with some of my medicinal herbs, like the marshmallow root that I have here and the marshmallow leaves. This is just a little bit of 1 year's harvest. That's all this is. If you are able to have a garden of any kind, even if it's a small container garden in your house or in your apartment, you can grow quite a bit of herbs inside your own apartment in pots. And that can save you some money on herbs that you would normally buy in those little tiny containers, that now you don't have to buy those herbs. Now you can go out and buy a 1 pound or 5 pounds or 25 pounds of whatever it is you're wanting to put up. Do the math and figure out what the savings would be to buy. Do I buy a 5 pound bag of this organic flour here, or can I go to Costco and buy 20 pounds of flour? Maybe I'm paying more at one time to get this 20 pounds of flour, but how much money am I saving by doing this than to continue keep buying the 5 pound bags at my local grocery store or wherever it is? You know, it could be looking, if you have an Azure Standard drop point and you're looking at buying grains and cheeses and various kinds of baking goods, herbs and spices. If you have a drop point near you, that's going to be one of the best places you can get high quality organic foods for the best price. If you don't have a drop point, then you're going to have to pay a lot in shipping. But sometimes even with those, I sometimes will do Azure Standard when the shipping altogether still comes out to be less per pound for me to buy through Azure Standard than to buy from either Amazon or even someplace more local. So I'll still do that. It just depends on what's available to me more locally and what the price differences are. So you got to look at your various different places. Look at your Costco. If you have a Costco near you, typically it's going to be the best savings to go into the local store. But if you don't have one near you and you're like us, there are plenty of things you can get online, even if you have to pay a little extra because you're buying it online and they got to ship it. You can still end up saving, like this one. I bought this online and it was shipped to me. In fact, I think this was bought online. Paid a little bit more per container buying it online, but how much money and fuel did I save not having to drive into town to purchase it in there? So you got to weigh all these different things out. Sit down and do the hard math and consider what it is you want to buy first. Look at your budget and look carefully. What is it that you can live without for a week, a day, a month, maybe even a year? Because as I said, when we went to pay off the house, the more we did that, sometimes we would sit down daily, almost every morning, and say, okay, what else can we do different? Because once you start seeing that savings build up, just like we were watching the principal of the house going down and down and down, and as the principal went down, that meant each regular payment, more of that was actually going on to the principal than going into interest. And it got exciting. And so then it actually became like a fun game, trying to figure out what else can we cut, even if it's for a short period of time. How else can we save money in order to put more on the principal? And in this case, in order to be able to put more into buying foods in bulk that will save you more money, so that then you can buy more foods in bulk to keep building up your food storage. And don't forget that you can also buy things in bulk and can them yourself or dehydrate them yourself. And that might be able to save you even more money there, even if you can't grow these things for yourself. And don't pass up good deal, like in cases when people have just given us, like our neighbor one year had just way more plums than he knew what to do with, and he was just giving them away to whoever was willing to take them. Yep, we took those plums, dehydrated. I made plum jams. I made plum mead. I did all kinds of stuff with plums that year. Back before our apple tree really got to where it was producing really well, the neighbors across the street always have more apples than they ever know what to do with. And I would get apples from them. I would dehydrate up a whole bunch, and then for us and a bunch for them, and then give them to them as a trade. So they had some dehydrated apples that they could share with their kids from their own tree. Just look into different ways that you can save money, and don't pass up a free gift just because you're afraid of what am I going to do with all of it, because there's no way I can eat 50 pounds of onions or apples or plums before they all go bad. Don't forget, you can preserve these things yourself in many different ways, from freezing to dehydrating to canning. But yes, you need to start with the things you use the most, the things you need the most. Start there and then build on that. It doesn't have to be an overnight change. I know a lot of times when we first get into being preparedness, most of us go through that whole crazy freak out phase that can last up to 18 months. Sometimes it's just a few months. But the nice thing about that is it's something that spurs us into getting going. But when we're in that, we kind of freak out and stress out thinking we have to have 3 years worth of food now, right now. And for most people, that's just not doable. So as long as you're doing a little bit here and there, as long as you're putting in once a week, a few extra cans of green beans, or another, even if it is only a 5-pound bag of rice or a 5-pound bag of beans, as long as you're doing something a little bit each week, you're doing something. And that's what matters. And as you start to find ways to save money and to cut back on some things and to save money in other ways, there's so many different ways you can save money. We have a whole series on 5 ways to save money on electricity, 5 ways to save money on water, 5 ways to save money on paper products, and so on and so forth. It's a whole series. I know we could keep adding to it, but it kind of fell by the wayside. But I'll link to that video down below, as well as a few others that I think will help people consider what they need to do, things that they can do to help save money in order to help them be able to put up for hard times. And besides that, a lot of the money saving things you can do, such as darning your own socks, these are going to be skills you're going to need in a hard grid down situation if that does truly happen. Even if it only happens to you in your little small circle, whatever that may be. It might not happen to your whole city or county or even the whole country. It might just be your own personal grid down situation. So everything that you can do, every skill that you can learn, everything that you can put up, no matter how small, that is something. So take solace in that and realize that it takes time and practice to get yourself to a point to where you can have 2 to 3 years of food, or be able to even buy things in bulk like we do now. And know that I'm still learning too. I'm not there. I haven't arrived yet. I'm where I wanted to be 20 years ago or so, but I still have other things I consider and weigh out and think, wow, I'd like to have more of this in my food storage, or I'd like to be able to do that, or I'd like to be able to have this bigger piece of property so we can expand more, or whatever it is. I mean, there's always things that we can do to improve, no matter how many years we've been doing it, no matter what we have, there's always things we can improve on what we have. And it might not even be having more of something, but just finding better ways to do it, such as better ways to store your food, or developing more skills so that you don't have to buy this or even barter for that from somebody else. All right, well, I hope you found this video helpful, and please understand the points I'm trying to make are not at all meant to be condescending in any way, because we've all had to start somewhere. Unless we were already born into this way of thinking, we've all had to start somewhere and reevaluate and change and work on these things. And I am certainly one of those people. Oh, and if you have any tips you would like to share with anyone else, and you've been a long-term prepper or food store or whatever you want to call yourself, put your tips down below on ways that people can help themselves get get in a better position. All right, well, thanks for watching. Take care and God bless.